Mike, how are you?
Well, I'm okay, Alex. How are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty
I've
good,
been
thanks.
running around the world. I've been to France to go shooting with Browning.
Tell me, the 825, what are your honest thoughts on it? You've shot a lot of Browning.
Just what do I think of the 825? The 825 is a refined 725, but there are differences. Um, there is, for example, they've reworked the fences.
Yeah.
They've reworked the top sort of look at the action walls. The rear barrel wings and fences are different. The trigger's slightly different. It's
I
a
was going to ask
mechanical
you
trigger,
about that. Oh, it's a mechanical trigger.
and they've changed the pivot point on it. And the advantage is it can now reliably function with 21-gram loads. So that's quite a big deal because it is irritating when you've got a bigger, heavy old clay gun. Because it's absorbing all the recoil, sometimes if they are
Yeah.
inertia activated triggers, it doesn't work. So that shouldn't be a problem now with this. They've very slightly changed the shape of the safety catch at the top, the actual button under your thumb.
Really?
It's a little bit more positive. The
Yeah.
fore end latch has a very minor change to it too, but you are really struggling to describe it. The one interesting little change is the fore end arm on the 825 is different to the 725. And where the fore end arm meets the wood of the fore end, as I remember, and I'm just trying to pull this out of my memory as we talk, it's a curved surface now, so it might be less prone to fore end cracking, and it looks sexier. The guns aesthetically look a bit different. They have reworked the action on the 825 as well as at the top of the action wall and the top of the monoblock and the action fences have been sort of streamlined. And what the idea in the Browning designer's mind has been to make the gun look lower, but it's the same
How does
height.
it feel?
That's
How
a
does
good.
it feel?
That's a very good question. But it's the same height as a 725, and at the bottom of the action, they very slightly, marginally changed the radius again to give the look of it being not quite as tall. But it's exactly the same as the 725. To me, it shot just the same. And
Hmm.
the clever thing about the 725, which is also the clever thing about the 825, is although it uses essentially the same mechanical principles and mechanism as a B-25, then evolved into the Japanese made 325s,
Hmm.
425s, and 525s. Although it does all that, but it still managed to be a sort of sleeker package. And I think it handles, some people are very attached to their MK38s, very attached to their
Yeah.
B-25s. Well, I'm one of those people who actually prefers shooting the 725 or indeed the 825. Now, let's talk specifics.
So you're an
We had,
immediate convert to the 825.
excuse me,
You're an immediate convert to the 825.
no, I wouldn't say that. If I had a 725, which it happens I have, because it did seem maybe new gun syndrome that I couldn't miss a pheasant with it. Well, I can tell you exactly how many pheasants I shot in France, because unfortunately there was somebody counting our shots and doing a kill to cartridge ratio. And on the partridges, I shot 1:9, 1.9 to 1, which wasn't too bad. And
Oh,
on the high pheasant, I did
1.19 to what? So nearly 2 to 1.
not yeah, a little bit better than two to
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
And on the high pheasants, I did I think 2.2, which was just
Right.
over 2 to 1, which wasn't bad.
That's good.
And
Did
you
it
want
did
to
it
go?
feel smooth with your injury, or do you think you were
Yeah,
more susceptible to
it
recoil?
felt smooth. It depends which one we're looking at because of course the sport, the pro sport feels very different to the game version.
Yeah.
The pro sport is another big gun. It's a big beast. 30 or 32. It's got the DS chokes, which the 725 had. I think now that Browning are doing the chokes in 5 thou increments. I think
Yeah.
that's another change that's coming in. And there's also a 12 mil at the breech, 8 mil at the muzzles
Really?
sighting rib. Now, I went off and checked that, and actually, I thought that was new, but no, there were 725 Pro Sports that had the same rib, I believe. But
Right.
my 725, which is a black action one, has a
Yeah.
10 parallel rib.
Yeah.
So, what did it feel like? It felt predictable, and that, of course, is what you can say about Brownings and Berettas. They are the most predictable guns.
Well, I
So,
never
if
predicted an 825 coming out, Mike. Did you?
really, yeah, these big companies have to reinvent the wheel
Yeah, but it just
every
came
few
from
years.
nowhere, didn't it?
Yeah, but the Browning were very creative in the way they did this. It looks smart. The Pro Sport version, the 825 Pro Sport, I think the engraving on that is really clever. It's very,
Mm.
very attractive. There's also a
It kind of
black
loops
action.
through the action, doesn't it? It's actually it reminds me of the Benelli 828U, how it just kind of cuts through the action with that
Yeah,
engraving.
it's got that look, although I think for me anyway, I prefer the way the Browning shoots. Yeah.
Yeah.
But of course, you've got to always put these things into context. This is a company that has enormous experience making repeaters and
Mm.
probably wanted to apply the same sort of technology to making an over and under, because they see all those people like us who shoot, particularly, the UK is treasure, UK and the US, but the UK particularly is treasure island for European
Oh
continental
yeah,
gun. I
totally.
mean, where do all the guns go? I mean, you sell them. Where do they all go? It amazes me. But
I don't
some
know.
guns are definitely, you get people saying, oh, it doesn't matter what the gun is. Well, it does. It makes a colossal difference. The right gun, a gun you feel comfortable with, a gun that actually does everything that it's meant to do, really does help you. And the Browning 825, for me, really worked. The Pro Sport is 38 and 58. The game gun is a little few mil higher at heel, excuse me.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was. I didn't think it was bad. I'd still like to see it. I'd still like to see standard dimensions. It's higher than it was in the past, because which is great.
What
Um,
made the experience about it memorable? When did you think, wow, they've really done something here?
well,
Is this
I'll tell you what.
releases?
I can give a really good answer to that
Yeah, yeah,
question,
good. Yeah.
because David, Charlie's cameraman, turned up on my peg when we were double gunning, and he said, "You don't mind if I filmed you?" And I thought, "Oh God, do I really? I don't want to be missing on camera." And somehow, with the 30-inch game gun, I think I shot 10 birds in a row,
Really?
and
And
yeah, and including the first one, which was a really high bird, and everybody cheered. And I thought that did, there's no doubt about it. If you're game shooting and you shoot your first bird, it boosts your confidence. and
yeah.
and if the opposite happens, of course, you tend to think about it. Yeah, absolutely. And the gun slows down, you slow down instead of just going for it. Sure.
Top lever. Tell me about that. How did that feel? What was that like?
They've made it what they say. They've made it a little bit more ergonomic, and unless they told me, I wouldn't have noticed. But I believe it's a fraction longer and a fraction slimmer. And
Right.
on the safety catch button, I think that it's the same size of slider, but the button is a little bit smaller and a little bit more positive under the thumb.
Yeah.
I mean, these are subtle changes, and the change to the fore-end latch is even more subtle, as
Mm.
indeed the changes to the bottom of the action radius.
And
What's
what?
less subtle
So
are the action fences, and at the top there, the rear of the monoblock, the way that's been reshaped, that is different.
and what do you think about the new finish?
Are we talking action finish now?
No, I'm talking about the wood, the oil finish.
Now I know you see, I watched you doing a review the other day, and you
Hmm.
love well finished wood, and
Oh,
so do I. And,
yeah.
and very few manufacturers get it right. I mean, I'm very fond of Berettas. I put hundreds of thousands of cartridges through Berettas.
I'm not fond of
No, I know, no, I got that slight bias, but I am.
it.
I mean, I dread to think how many cartridges have gone through my old Beretta 303, and I've still got the 30-inch barrel that Chris Craddock gave me many, many years ago, and a 32-inch sported barrel, which
They
they're
are
just
nice,
unobtainiable.
actually, those ported A303. I have shot those. They are good.
They
Yeah,
are lovely. They're
yeah,
soft. They point well. They
they're
don't have any
easy,
building
aren't
mechanism at the
they?
front.
Yeah,
They are just a brilliant gun.
yeah, they are.
So I love Berettas, and I've got a double E double L 28 bore, and other things. Oh, and a 695. I think that's an underrated gun, and I think it's a shame that they stopped making those.
Hmm.
But Beretta have not been great on their wood finish,
No,
and
not for a long time.
no, and Browning have generally been better. And I
Hmm.
would say that the 825 maintains that good standard, and the wood has also been upgraded. They
Yeah,
put great effort into improving the wood on the guns.
good.
They put commercial phraseology onto that. Call it a grade 3 or 4 or whatever. What's really counts when you and I look at it. Does it look nice? Yes, it looked nice. It looked good. It looked of a good standard and was well finished.
Yeah, yeah. That's
But for
great.
me, the shapes on the Sporter were a bit too big. I thought the cone could do with slimming a bit, could have maybe had a little bit of taper in. Not, you don't want too much on a competition gun, but a little bit. The
Yeah.
game gun, particularly the semi-pistol grip game gun, and indeed I've had a chance to play with the full grip, fairly open radius full grip as well on the game gun. That seemed about right. So yeah, that's good. It
Do you
suited
think
it
we're
well.
going to see it in a smaller action? Do you think they're going to be bringing out 410s and
Yeah,
20?
they're going to bring out a 20 ball, and they did tell me the timetable for this. I think the 20 ball comes in a year or 18 months, something like that.
Okay.
And of course, again, there's another interesting point. I often say to people who do what we do, if you're advising, a 30-inch 20 ball is never wrong. I
Yeah.
love 30-inch 20 balls, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason, and it's actually quite interesting. Most 30-inch 20 balls weigh £7 or just over £7. If you go back to the very best of British, let's go back to 1900 and Hollands and Birdies, a 30-inch game gun, which is what defined a best gun,
Yeah.
they weigh about the same. So a 30-inch 20-bore machine-made gun handles
Same as a
in a
side by
very
side.
similar way
Yeah.
to the very best of English, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so no one ever makes that point, but it's an interesting point. So I think the ideal weight for a game gun, we might just say as we're having this chat, which is fun, by the way, is about £7, maybe a fraction over, not much less, because you want to absorb the recoil. It depends if you're going to be, if you're walking up, that's another matter.
Yeah.
But, about that. And a clay gun, roughly speaking, wants to be a pound or so more. And again, this
Yeah.
is an
Eight and a
interesting
half,
topic.
I think.
Yeah, but a lot of modern clay guns start to get very heavy. Instead of being 8.25, maybe 8.5, there are quite a lot of big competition guns now, which are £9 or so,
Yeah,
which
it's
in my
crazy.
opinion, that's getting
It's
too
all
heavy.
it's all those extended chokes.
It
Um,
is. And I don't know what that says about the owners, but yes, extended everything.
yeah, it's
And so,
crazy. It's a
I
trend.
mean,
It's a
I
trend,
don't
and the
really
tide
care
is
anymore.
turning on it.
I don't shoot competitions anymore. I've done enough competitions. I shoot just for the sheer love of shooting. I love the perfect shot. I love to shoot with people who honor what we do, who enjoy what we do, do all the good stuff. And I like to shoot now either with a 30-inch 20 bore or with a fairly light 30-inch 12. And when I say fairly light,
Mike,
let's
are
say
you going to buy the
7.5.
new? Are you going to buy the 825 20 ball?
I might buy the 825, but I'll tell you what's a fabulous buy now. The
Yeah.
725s will become a fabulous buy because everybody.
Well, I wonder whether the 825 will replace the 525. Because a 525 is like it's like the silver
Here's
pigeon,
my
isn't it,
cup of tea.
basically?
Cheers.
So cheers. So I think that maybe it's going to replace the 525.
Grouse, I missed it this year. It was rained off, sadly. I had a lovely invitation, couldn't do it. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, do you think the 825 is going to replace the 525 and run along the 725?
An interesting point. You get the impression that maybe not, because I would guess that the 525 is significantly cheaper to make. And
Okay.
that's another intriguing point. Browning were kind enough not that long ago to invite me to go to Japan, and I've been waiting to go to Japan for 15 years, I think.
Yeah, so it's on my list to
Yeah,
do.
well, it's an interesting thing. And I also had a great time because Japan's fascinating. And I went to Kyoto and I went to Hiroshima as well.
Did
Fascinating
you?
experience. But the factory was so different to Beretta. If you go to Beretta, and Beretta is a very, very impressive factory. It is so high tech.
Tell me about Japan.
Yeah, no, I will. I'll come back to it. But the difference is at Beretta, everything's robotized now. They model the shooter, they do a million shots through their simulations, then they make a gun, they have impact detectors. I mean, they are so scientific, you wouldn't believe it. Maruku which is where, of course, Brownings and 825s and 725s are made. They're much more old school. There's much more handwork.
It
And for
even
example,
says on the barrels, sorry to interrupt, doesn't it? It even says Maruku on the 825 barrels.
it does.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is if you, for example, there are two log jams in a gun factory. One is at the final stage when somebody's got to check the trigger pulls, check the ejectors are properly timed. That takes skilled human hands and eyes. But the other one is where you put barrels together. Machines can't put barrels together. It requires, and it has to be done really well. Now, at Maruku, it's like a Formula One pit crew. There's about half a dozen blokes all coming onto this set of barrels, all working together as a team to make the barrels. But it's very hands-on. The woodwork stuff is very hands-on. I don't know, but just from an immediate assessment, I'd say there's appears to be twice as many processes that are still involving human hands with a Browning or a Maruku as there are with a modern Beretta. Now, that's not to say the modern Berettas aren't very, very good and that
Although
there
it's
aren't
still hand
advantages to it.
checkered. Brownings are still hand checkered.
Partly hand checkered. It's
Yeah,
like the engraving. What they do with the
hand
engraving, again,
finished.
yeah, but no, the engraving was fascinating because it depends on the model. But on sort of MK38 type guns, they're laying the checkering out with a laser and it's just traced on with a laser.
Yeah.
And then they go over that with the engraving chisel. Now, all of these companies are getting really, really good at doing laser engraving. But at Maruku, they were still doing a lot of hand engraving, a lot of hand work on the checkering. And there's a sort of mixture of using these sort of Dremel-like tools with cutting blades and handwork.
Yeah.
But I was really impressed with that human input at Maruku.
Just have you got any final closing comments on this 825, Mike? What can we prepare for?
What can we prepare for? Yeah, I think my closing comment would be this. The 825 impressed. It was a good gun. There was nothing that struck me as being out of place or wrong with it. I take my hat off to the engineering team who've done a lot of work and they have subtly refined and improved the 725. If I had a 725, however, I wouldn't be rushing to buy an 825 because in its essence, it's not that much different. But the 725, which is the base gun for the 825, is an absolutely brilliant shotgun. First class. And the way they refined it and the way they took the 525 and made it lower, and I think a better handling gun with a better point of inertia on the second shot, I thought that was very clever. I do find I prefer to shoot 725s and 825s to 525s, and I
But
find
now
them
it's a
more
mechanical
comfortable to
trigger
shoot.
on the 825, isn't it? It's a mechanical trigger now.
Well, the mechanic it's a mechanical trigger, so it's not dependent on inertia energy. But the point about that trigger is they've also changed the pivot point internally, as I said, so it will now function reliably on 21-gram cartridges. So that's a good thing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, we all want if you've got a heavy clay gun and you can only lay hands on 21-gram cartridges, which happens sometimes, you still want it to be able to function reliably. And so one of the things that is a theme of my testing and is going to become more of a theme is what offers value for money.
Yeah, that's what I'm interested in, which is
Yeah.
why I'd always go for a B25. But anyway, look, we've got to go. I'll talk to you soon, Mike.
Have a great year.
All right, thanks for your time. I'll speak to you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye.